Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey Graham. Join us here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where the independent new authors come first. Joining me right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable is author Brigitta Hebdon. Brigitta, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Brigitta, I can't wait to find out about your new book, God Spells Love with an X. Can you tell me all about it?
So my book it's actually a memoir about raising my son. He's 24 now, who has Fragile X syndrome, intellectual disabilities, and severe autism.
What kinds of readers do you think that this would connect with the most, Brigitta?
I think it's definitely written from the perspective of a mom. So it's probably more relatable to women and definitely parents, any parents really, because it's actually a humorous perspective. And so I think probably anyone who's had children has had embarrassing or frustrating issues that you can laugh about later. And that's really what this book is full of. There is a very explicit chapter about some of the challenges we've had with the school systems. So I also think this book would be very beneficial and enlightening to educators, future educators, paraprofessionals, anyone who's going to be dealing especially with special needs kids, administrators, definitely educators and parents, and really any moms, I think, would really get a kick. There's some really funny experiences in this book.
What was that spark, that inspiration that made you say, hey, I got to write this book?
Well, I actually have a degree. My background is in communications and broadcasting. So doing something with communications has always been a dream of mine. But I was kind of chronicling, I'm not sure if that's a word, my son's funny things that he would do and say on Facebook for years. And so many of my friends would be like, you have to write these things down. You have to make a book. And the thing is, my experience with Jared and what is really common in families that have kids with special needs is there's a lot of really great, funny, and blessed moments and a lot of extremely challenging moments. And so it's really the dichotomy of having that parenting experience, kind of the way you have a toddler, right? When you have a toddler, I'm not saying that to diminish my son, but it's the closest thing I can relate to typical parenting, where 1 minute they're just adorable and they say the cutest things, and then the next minute they're, having a blowout in public and you're embarrassed. And, it's kind of like that. It's like there's some really embarrassing and funny moments and some really, really challenging moments. And it was actually very cathartic for me to write this book. It reminded me what a blessing my life is with my son in my life.
Is this all new for you, Brigitta, writing and publishing, or do you have experience doing it?
Well, many years ago, I was published just articles in a local newspaper, and I would do feature articles, business articles. And that was probably about 25 years ago now. And I just really got the bug. I have a friend who's an author. I actually have a couple of friends who are authors. And I recognized that was kind of my talent, really, is to write. And I wanted to write my experiences so that other families could relate and see that having challenges with kids is hard but doable.
Well, I could only imagine what was going through your head whenever the first copy came in and you were finally holding this book in your hands for the first time. Brigitta, what was that like for you?
That was pretty special because the publication process was time-consuming and also brand new to me. I really didn't know what I was doing. And so it was just such an accomplishment to actually hold it in my hands and see it's real, you know?
Looking down the road, do you see yourself writing a follow-up of sorts or something else?
I actually do have a book in process. Again, it's kind of a slow process again. I don't want to kind of be a one and done kind of writer. This is my first experience, and I would like to continue writing and doing meaningful work, to be honest with you.
What a wonderful book. Again, this is titled God Spells Love with an X. It's written by Brigitta Hebdon and published by Covenant Books. Pick it up at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, or right down the street at your local bookshop. Brigitta, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was really great to talk with you.
Thank you for having me, and have a great day.
I'm delighted that author Elda Sullins is joining me right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Elda, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, sir, for inviting me and be able to express myself and share my book.
Elda, you have a new book out. It's titled In the Midst of Deep Water, Your Light Will Make It Through. Can you tell me about what you've written here?
Well, first of all, I would like to start with, I have some questions I have written for myself actually to share. What inspired me to write this book? Well, first of all, the book was written in a midst of a season with God, a winter season actually. God had prepared me to clean up my schedule and said that he wanted to release this book for the church. And so then I took time off. It took a period of 3 months to write this book. And the book, pretty much, it is based in 12 chapters that the Lord took me in with the book. And it is pretty much bringing all the reformation of the church, you know, the conduct, the truthfulness, the obedience to God's word, and how, as a believer, we have been misled in many multiple things in the church. And so he wanted to speak through this book. And so that was pretty much what it led me to write the book. I do not write any books without the guidance of the Holy Spirit and God speaking to me to any reason. So this book is truly God speaking through every chapter, every guidance that is within the 12 chapters.
Elda, what kinds of readers do you think this is best for?
I'm trying to reach believers to see the truth, you know, of the conduct of the church, which, you know, is the false doctrine and the correct doctrine. And I'm trying to reach believers and non-believers. And why non-believers? Believers can be, you know, instructed to see more of the truth of the church. And so I'm reaching both, believers and non-believers, from younger to older, both.
Once you got started on writing this, was this a long journey for you, writing, publishing, everything?
Truly, the writing part, it wasn't hard at all. Like I said, it's being in the season with God. He just lead you to write. You know, I get up at 2 a.m. all the way until he has me until afternoon if it's possible. So I am in the spirit, flowing in the spirit, writing everything I hear from him, his heart, and truly just writing with love, with all that I can write with, and give him all the times that he wants to speak in out of his heart and write his word for people to see his word. So it wasn't hard at all. It was actually an incredible, beautiful season. I love both of my books. I have published one previous to this one. So, and I'm, you know, hoping and praying that the Lord lead me to more books, which he has, but I have not yet published. So no, this book was born of just pure obedience, faithfulness, and just hearing the voice of God and hearing his heart speaking through that book.
Once you started working with your publisher, Christian Faith, Elda, what did you find to be the most challenging part about that publishing process?
Okay, there was many challenging, and I will tell you something. They're an incredible company. They are, you know, like any other new writer, you will learn the upside down of it. But overall, I feel like they have taught me a lot on how to, you know, publish a book. And I know that we have a little ups and in and outs, but besides that, I think it was more like a teaching kind of way for me to learn how to publish the book correctly. And a lot of misunderstanding in the way that it wasn't for me. It was for me to learn. But, you know, and in the beginning, I thought, well, I want it this way like any other writer. But after all, it's been a blessing. It's been an incredible blessing. I know that, you know, I pray that God continue to work I've continued to write my books through them, publish my books with them. So I'm actually very pleased with the company.
And once you were finally holding the first copy of your book in your hands, Elda, what was that moment like for you?
It was the fulfillment of God. Truthfulness is He promised, and that promise, I hold into it. He said that that book will be published, and holding that book was just knowing that the heart of God was in that book.
It sounds like this book is definitely going to bless a lot of readers. Again, it's titled, In the Midst of Deep Water, Your Light Will Make It Through. It's written by Elda Sullins and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So head to places like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes or traditional brick-and-mortar stores and you'll be able to pick this up. Elda, thank you again for coming on the show. It was really great to chat with you.
Thank you, sir. You have a blessed evening.
I'm holding a book right now that's a fantasy tale of friendship, courage, and destiny. It's written by J.L. Bryant, and it's titled Tales of Blacksnake, Legacy Begins. The author, Jake, is here with me right now at the show, and we're going to be talking all about it. Jake, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Thank you for letting me come in.
Jake, can you tell me all about Tales of Blacksnake and what readers are going to find here?
It's basically just a tale about three childhood friends just, trying to go into a nation for an alliance and deal with some challenges.
Jake, what kinds of readers do you think would be into this the most?
I would say probably young teens and young adults.
So how did this idea strike you? What was the inspiration to start writing it?
Honestly, it was just like a thank you to my childhood friends. And then over time, I kept going and one thing led to another.
Jake, what does your writing background look like? Have you done a lot of this kind of thing before?
No, first time.
So being your first one, was this a long process for you, the writing and publishing and everything?
I would definitely say the publishing was probably the longest part, but I'm very thankful for God and just in general for being able to even publish it at all.
So you started working with your publisher, Christian Faith. Jake, what would you say was the most challenging part of that publishing process for you?
Oh, man, that's a good question. I would probably say when that was happening, I was also moving out of my last house into an apartment. So dealing with that, also moving kind of was a lot.
And there's nothing like seeing that finished product. And once you were holding your book in your hands for the first time, Jake, what was that like for you?
At first, it was a moment of disbelief and then very dreamlike. And then eventually I just got more determined because, finally had it in my hands.
And now that your work is out there for the world, you're a published author. What would you say is the most rewarding aspect of it all for you?
Probably meeting with other writers and exploring creative and writing stuff, just exploring just different ideas and meeting different people.
When you look ahead, do you have plans to maybe write and publish more?
I hope so.
Jake, do you maybe have some advice that you could throw out there for the aspiring authors who are listening to us?
I do have maybe a couple. I think number one right now is probably make sure you're financially stable before doing it, just because you don't know how that book's going to go for the first time. Again, not saying to them that it won't, be a massive hit, but you just never know. And then also having faith in yourself and also having faith in God and having people there to help you along the way helps a lot.
So this is something that happens to so many of us authors. It can be so frustrating. It's writer's block. Jake, is that something that you have to deal with from time to time?
Every once in a while, but I have this formula now where if I get a writing block from this one story, I usually can find something else to write about.
Over the years, I've talked with so many authors, and I've noticed how many of them also love to read. Jake, would you call yourself an avid reader?
More or less. Lately, I've just been doing a lot of audiobooks. Just with the Christmas season, I've been very busy.
Jake, if there was one big idea, one major theme that you want every reader to come away with once they've read Tales of Blacksnake, what would you say that is?
I would definitely say morality, and the theme of friendship.
Again, this book is titled Tales of Blacksnake, Legacy Begins. It's written by J.L. Bryant, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and available basically everywhere. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, or right down the street at your local bookshop. Jake, thank you so much again for coming on the show. It was really great to talk with you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
Chatting with me right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable is author Diane Wiedemann, and her new book delves into divine healing and personal transformation through God therapy. It's titled Made in His Image, Part 1, Where It All Began. Diane is sitting here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Diane, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Diane, can you tell me what readers are going to be getting into when they open up Made in His Image?
Well, my husband and I had 6 children, and my husband passed away. So at the time of choice, it was either suicide or go to therapy. And I opted to go to therapy because I love my kids and they love me. I invited God to go with me to therapy, and He came. The only way to explain what happened is it's a miracle. That's why I call it God therapy, because He helped me to get well and healed from what happened to me.
What kinds of readers did you have in mind for this?
Anybody who has a mental illness and wants to get well, and any therapist who wants to understand mental illness better, because the book is filled with choices. So, for example, if I had an issue come up in therapy, I had man's answer, through the therapist, and then I had God's answer to the same dilemma. And then the Lord would blend them. So I literally got well from a combination of what the therapist was teaching me and what I was learning and what God was telling me. Because often man is confined to his own thoughts or his thinking or his schooling, and sometimes there were other options available to me, and I would take them, and they helped me to take the next steps forward. So I was in therapy for 10 years, and I literally asked the Lord to guide me in how to get well. And He would. Told me what books to read, what people to talk to, what to talk about in therapy so I could keep making steps forward. That's why chapter 1 is titled Chaos, because I don't know about anybody else's life but my own. But so often we are entangled in what happens to us as part of our story. I was abused growing up for 24 years. I ended up with a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, and I would no longer meet the criteria. That is how good the Lord is. So even though we're talking about book 1, I do want the readers to know that there is a book 2 called Made in His Image, Healing is a Process, and a book 3 that says Made in His Image, It All Comes Together, because the 3 books together tell the story of what happened to me and how I got well. And then there's a workbook to follow that I created that allows the reader to delve into their own story to get well with the guidance of God therapy, because I wrote the format specifically the way the Lord spoke to me, and it's not a retelling of my story. You can actually explore your own story and find healing. Now, these stories and books are not a substitute for therapy. That's not my intention. It's the Lord told me to write the book, and I did. It's simply a guide to help others to get well, because I first received therapy, God therapy, and now it's available for all who have need, because a lot of people can't afford therapy. And it's, like I said, it's not a substitute for therapy, but it's a good place to get started when you can't afford much, because the value of the books together is about the equivalent of one evaluation from a therapist and maybe one session, but at least it gets you going in the right direction.
Once you started writing this, was this a long process for you overall, the writing and publishing, the whole thing?
It took me 10 years of therapy and 5 years, because it took me 2.5 to get it on computer and 2.5 to get it all published. All the books are out now.
So once that first copy came in and you were finally holding Made in His Image in your hands for the first time, Diane, what was that moment like for you?
That's when you get down on your hands and knees and tell the good Lord, thank you. I cried because it was such a beautiful experience for me. It was not stressful. I just did what the Lord told me to. He told me where to put the chapter divisions, what Bible verse. Every chapter has a Bible verse at the top, and then the Lord's response to it and mine as a part of my story. The whole thing was absolutely loving. I don't know how else to say it. The Lord loved me through my experience of writing the books, and I enjoyed doing it. It didn't seem like work.
Well, this book will definitely be a blessing to a lot of readers. Again, it's titled Made in His Image, Part 1, Where It All Began. It's written by Diane Wiedemann, published by Covenant Books, and available a lot of places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Diane, thank you again for coming on the show. It's been really nice to talk with you tonight.
Thank you.
Sitting right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable is author Sherry Gay. Sherry, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Sherry, you have a new book out titled The Tellin' Takes Courage, The Good Lord Raised Me. Can you tell me what you've written about there?
What I've written about was my life story. It started out being about my spiritual experiences, and I didn't want the hourglass to run out on my life without documenting those. And I've had a very interesting life, so that's how it started out. That was my purpose in writing it. But many women have come up to me, and then one man also who came up and spoke of sexual abuse that they had experienced as a child and had never told anyone. And my book gave them the courage. So due to all of their comments, I've written another book called Tell Someone. It's for children, and that should be coming out before long. Also, people have noted interesting things about the Fort Worth history, A Highway to Hell, which I lived, and Leonard Brothers. So many people are of the age that they remember all of this, and segregation, where the blacks had separate water fountains from whites, and they had to sit in the back of the bus. Some people relate to that, and some people relate to the antics that I got into as a child, a latchkey kid, such as thinking I could walk across a picket fence, fell, the picket caught in my shorts, and I hung there over a drainage ditch for hours until my mother got back to pick me up. And so my sister said, "What did you do all day?" And I said, "Well, I envisioned alligators down there, but I knew I would escape." And she said, "Can't you just go watch TV?" And I thought, no, I was a child that never could just go watch TV. I was catching fireflies or getting into mischief. So several readers have told me that reading my book caused them to laugh on one page and cry on the next. And so they could relate to the book. So basically, there's a little bit of everything in there for anyone who wants to read. I think it's an interesting read.
Oh, Sherry, what does your writing background look like? Is this new for you, or do you have experience in it?
Not other than I wrote for a local newspaper one time, a Bombeck type article. Didn't get paid, by the way. And I was an English teacher. I've taught English in all subjects, actually, from 3rd grade to 8th grade. I love junior high kids. I can roll my eyes with the best of them. So I do have another book that I have in mind of writing called Teaching from the Foxhole, because a lot of people who went to school think they know about kids and teaching, and they don't. But this book I was being haunted by a dream saying I need to write this book. And once I finally decided if I was ever going to sleep again, I would have to try my hand at it. And when I submitted it for publication, the publisher told me that they get hundreds of books. I probably would not hear back from them for a couple of weeks or more. And so 2 days later, I got a call from Newman Springs, and they said that they wanted to publish my book. I thought they were calling to tell me that they weren't interested.
You know, we have a lot of authors listening to us right now that are just starting out. So, Sherry, do you have some advice maybe that you could offer?
Be true to yourself. Remember to laugh at things that happen to you in life. It is the best key. But be true to yourself in your writing and to your audience. Then that way, whether it is successful or not successful, what is success? Success to you is that you wrote it. You wrote this book. You did something that no one else could do, regardless of whether it's a bestseller or only people you know buy it. So my advice to you is to persevere. Have faith.
Well, again, this book is titled The Tellin' Takes Courage, The Good Lord Raised Me. It's written by Sherry Gay, and it's published by Newman Springs Publishing. So pick it up at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, or traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Sherry, thank you again for coming on the show. It's been so nice talking with you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Sitting down with me right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable is author M. Andrew Oregon Bouche. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me, Corey.
You have a new audiobook out. It's titled The Art of Doing Time, your complete primer on how to survive and thrive in jail or prison. Andrew, can you tell me about this?
The book, I just wanted to leave something of a legacy. If I were to die tomorrow, what is my mark in life? Nothing. So after graduation, the professor suggested I write a book on my experiences. I didn't want to talk about me. I wanted to talk about how people like me can go in, do their time the right way, with integrity, with honesty, and yet with their own ethical core that they want to keep. And, their manliness, the macho.
So would you say you've written this for people that have had similar experiences to yours?
No, I wrote it so that people that are getting in trouble, they're going to be going to jail or prison, or those that are in for the families to know what their son or daughter have to go through from the time when they first walk through the first gate to the time that they get released. I just wanted to leave a legacy, I had basically died and I was brought back. That was another story. And when I woke up, I just had clarity of purpose, clarity of choice. I didn't want to use drugs anymore. I didn't want to drink anymore. And where would I leave my mark? So I wrote a book. And what I wanted to do is to share the information. It's not really told knowledge. You see the things in the movies and the TV shows. It's either glorified or blown out of proportion. The day-to-day in jail or prison is very boring. That loneliness and that boring, that being bored, idle hands, right? So the book encourages those that are inside to get going on a hobby, in a program, in a school course or whatever, and get ready for your release at the end of your sentence. For the families, it tells them how to visit, how to do phone calls, how to send money in, how to keep the relationship alive, but yourself with your elders, yourself with your mate, and yourself with your children. So you have those three levels of generational communication you have to perform. So that's important. And the family needs to know how their loved one is going through all these things from the time that they get strip searched for the first time to when they get their parole papers and they're like really excited in their cell celebrating. So it gives a perspective for everyone. And for those that are struggling inside, how to deal with that, how to, not feel lonely, not get depressed, not commit suicide, as well as don't come back. If you're inside already, don't come back, which is one thing I'm leading into is I have a second book I'm writing right now as we speak. My theme is, first one was the art of doing time. The second book is the science of completing probation or parole. And the third one is the magic of success upon release. Those are the three that I'm basically writing. I'm now currently writing the second book, and everyone tells me that's the one you want. My book, it helps to explain a lot of things. It fills in the cracks, and also it gives hints and tricks and methods that you can do to deal with your boredom, to deal with your depression, to deal with, not being prepared for release.
I could only imagine what was going through your head whenever that first copy came in. You were holding it in your hands for the first time. Andrew, what was that moment like for you?
Well, it was very exciting. I was really proud of the book, and I'm really proud of the cover. The artist that I told what I wanted, he hit it on the very first try. Just a few alterations, and that was the cover of the book. I wanted to look out and see the world, but inside his time is melting away on him. The art, getting those colors back in, getting that, the picture to look better. So the science is going to have like a science guy, like a laboratory tech, and some things bubbling and pouring it in. And so I got an idea for that book cover. But I'm going to lead from the art of doing time into the science of completing probation and parole. And I'm going to lead into each book like that for when you get out, and also to stop recidivism. Recidivism is one of the biggest problems with our prison system. It's easier to go back in than it is to make it out on the street. So you have got to really work hard. Parole is harder than probation. That leads into the second book, too. The whole part of the rear end of the book is give them the lists and the resources that they need to get going to catch the fish. I'm not going to give them the fish to eat. I'm going to show them how to fish for their food.
What an important book. Again, this is titled The Art of Doing Time, your complete primer on how to survive and thrive in jail or prison. It's written by M. Andrew Oregon Bouche, and it's published by the Audiobook Network. Find it at places that you normally get your audiobooks at, like Audible, iTunes, or Amazon. Andrew, it's been great talking with you tonight. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Corey.
Talking with me right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable is author Sara J Barra, and her new book is titled We Might Fall. Sara, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Can you tell me all about We Might Fall and what readers are going to get into here?
Yeah, We Might Fall is a romantic drama, love triangle about a woman who loses her college sweetheart in a tragic accident and then has to figure out who she is as a grown woman in the world by herself. And, you know, her husband was a cop and she finds herself getting closer to his partner and also her new boss and trying to mourn but also fight sexual tension and romantic urges and figure out who she is. So she's like a total mess with all this stuff going on. And I think it's a great book. Like everyone all my beta readers loved it. I think anyone who gives it a solid chance would love it. I've got a sequel and a prequel and then a bunch of other ideas for stuff coming out.
Sara, what kinds of readers do you think this would connect with the best?
I've had readers from early 20s to mid 60s, and they were all very enthusiastic about it. So I would say there's a good range there.
Where'd you get that spark, that inspiration, Sara, to start writing this?
Well, I was enrolled in nursing school, and I was a little bit bored, and I was trying to settle a romantic urge I had within myself. And I couldn't find the literature that I wanted to read with the type of story I wanted. I couldn't find it in any book anywhere. I couldn't find it on TV anywhere, any movie. So I decided that I would write it myself, and then just one little sentence popped into my head, and I created an entire plot off of that sentence and turned into a book.
When it comes to your writing background, do you have experience doing this kind of thing?
I was always good at writing. And if I did not go into healthcare, I probably would have went into publishing.
Once you got started on We Might Fall, Sara, was this a long journey for you overall? Writing, publishing, the whole thing?
About a 10-year experience, yeah.
Then once you started working with your publisher, Newman Springs, Sara, what did you find to be the most challenging part about that publishing process?
There wasn't anything challenging about it. They were fantastic. You know, they did all of my editing for me. They made it so simple. I had an editor before COVID, before I found them. Just an editor, though, and she was having me, change all of my own edits, and that was so tedious. I didn't think I would ever get through it, but then I found them, and they loved my book and signed me as an author, and you know, the rest was history. So they were pretty fantastic to work with. I have no complaints.
Then it was finally a real thing. We Might Fall came in. You're holding the first copy in your hands. Sara, what was that moment like for you? So
surreal, honestly. I can't even really describe how it felt because it was so strange. And it still feels strange, you know? Suddenly, there's your book published and you're holding it and you're an author, you know?
Sara, what would you say is the most rewarding aspect of this all for you?
Seeing my book in print out there, knowing that people can get it and read it and hopefully love it as much as I do.
You talked about writing and publishing more, so you have more on the way.
I do. I have a sequel for We Might Fall that I had already started, so that is in the works. And then I have a prequel that explains all of the family stuff after that kind of ties it all together nicely. And then that'll be it for that series, and then I'll start doing other stuff. So,
again, this book is titled We Might Fall. It's written by Sara J Barra and published by Newman Springs Publishing. Pick it up at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, or traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Sara, thank you again for coming on the show. It was really nice to talk tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
The book I'm looking at is a memoir that follows the author's 30 years working in commercial fishing. It's titled The Sea Slave, A True Story. It's written by Kyle J. Matthews and
We're talking all about it right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Kyle is right here. Kyle, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. I'm privileged to be here. I really am.
Kyle, can you tell me all about The Sea Slave, a true story, and what you've written about here?
Well, I was talking to my pastor about that, and my father was a reading teacher 36 years. And he told me when I was a child, 5 people call you a horse, start looking for a saddle. But promoting my book in Salt Lake City, to make a long story short, people told me it's a testimony. And people in Massachusetts here said the same thing. It seems like a testimony. Basically, it is a testimony. It's a rough read, not sexual, but it's a very rough read. You know, I have to will forewarn people, you know. The Sea Slave was started in 2005 until my late wife passed away June 2nd, 2015. And my father found the book, the rough draft, and he slapped it on the dining room table, and he said, with a tear in his eye, this book has to be published. It was a long time coming for this book. A psychiatrist told me once to write down on paper everything that haunted me in my past. Things that I thought were normal were inhumane acts and wrong. You know, I have God in my life today to break through all the chains that were holding me in bondage. The only way God was forgiving me is if I start forgiving other people. But most of all, I must forgive myself. Now, we all loved adventures growing up. This adventure started for me with a glance on the ocean and boats being prepared for the next adventure. That common experience impacted my life in ways I never imagined. I cast myself in the industry of commercial fishing, where the laws are few except one, the captain's law.
Kyle, what kinds of readers do you think this would connect with the most?
Readers that went through a lot of adversity, a lot of abuse, physical, mental abuse, and I came through it all and got through all of it.
So what was that spark? What inspired you to start writing the book?
The psychiatrist told me to write down on paper everything I haunted me, and I kept going through my life. And validation from my father. He seen me on Discovery Channel, Lobster Wars, and I heard that he was holding his head in shame, saying that, pushing those steel cages around, meaning the lobster traps. And he always told me when I was young, get a job with the government, food, rubbish, who guaranteed paycheck every week. He said my paycheck was a roll of the dice. But he did say, make your avocation your vocation. And so I did. Validation from your father. I think now I'm 58, looking back, filling the whole circle in my life. And I think we all need to validate for our father. We need validation from our fathers.
So what does your writing background look like, Kyle? Have you ever written or published before this?
No. This is, I guess what you call it in songwriting, records is a one-hit wonder. I don't know. I'm not, planning on writing a sequel. If they make a movie of it, the cat's definitely coming out of the bag because there is a lot more. So that is my dream for it to become a movie. But the most I'm happy about why I did it is the fire under my butt. I'm a widower and I have 2 surviving children. Now I can go to my grave happy knowing I left my 2 surviving children something.
And so you talked about writing more. Do you have plans to publish and write more here in the future?
I was told that, if you go really back to the beginning and really thoroughly with brutal honesty, which I believe in today, unless it's going to hurt or harm someone, and methodically go through and rewrite the whole truth, all of it. That's what I said when they make a movie of it, cat's coming out of the bag.
Well, again, this book is titled The Sea Slave, a True Story. It's written by Kyle J. Matthews, and it's published by Newman Springs Publishing. So find it at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Kyle, thank you again for coming on the show and telling me all about your book and your story.
And thank you for having me, and thanks for helping my children.
The book that just came out, written by Syreeta L. Carrington, is titled The Gentle No, Wanting What Wasn't For Me. And we'll be talking all about it right now at the show. Syreeta is sitting here with me. Syreeta, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Syreeta, can you tell me what readers can expect whenever they get into The Gentle No?
So the readers can expect a story about a young girl who initially did not want children because she was the eldest daughter of 3 children raised by a single mother and was parentified quite early. And from that experience, wasn't keen on having children and sort of went about life in that vein until I met and married my husband, Luis. And I explain it as my heart expanding to embrace a possibility, the possibility of children. And then when we decided that we wanted to expand our family, it was much more difficult than I ever imagined it would be. So it's a story about my husband and our journey to conceive a child. And ultimately, we were not successful, but it's also a love story, not just between my husband and myself, but I believe it's God's love story towards me, and that his plan for my life may look different than what I anticipated. So the gentle no, wanting what wasn't for me, not only speaks to readers who may have had a difficult time conceiving a child and whether it did happen or whether it didn't happen, it really asks the question, what happens if the thing that you hoped and prayed for, what if you never get it? Are you going to be okay?
What sorts of readers do you think this would connect with?
So I believe, for one, on the nose, it definitely will connect with anyone who's had fertility struggles. So any couples who have had difficulty expanding their family, certainly I believe it may resonate there. But I also believe on a deeper level, on a wider level, it speaks to people who want and desire something for their life and struggle to attain it, but ultimately they may not achieve it. And so the question is, what will you do? Can you still trust that God has a plan for your life, even if your plan looks different than what God's plan for you is? So it also speaks to that spiritual set, that Christian set that understands that, what God says in his word, that he has a good plan for our lives. It just may not look like we anticipate it to be.
What does your writing background look like, Syreeta? Have you done this kind of thing before?
I haven't. This is my first book. I'm really pleased. I actually called this book my baby because I gave birth to this book. I have not had anything published before publishing The Gentle No, but I have kept a journal from a very young age. I am a journaler. That is how I process my emotions. I also like to look back in my journal, on my journal entries, to see what I was feeling at the time and maybe feeling that this was an insurmountable issue in my life, and to see that I made it over and it wasn't insurmountable as I built it up to be. So it's also a way to encourage myself to keep going. So my writing stems from keeping journals, but honestly, my writing stems from just a deep and abiding love for words. I've always loved words.
Looking ahead, do you see yourself writing and publishing more, do you think?
Oh, I do. I've got lots of ideas in me. I am right now toying with putting together a collection of short stories based on just sort of whatever, life, my experiences, people I come into contact with, situations that are absurd and ridiculous but funny. So right now I'm just sort of doing background information gathering, thinking of titles for different short stories, to be encouraged. But I'm not ready to start writing all of the stories that I have in mind yet.
Well, definitely a wonderful book. Again, it's titled The Gentle No, Wanting What Wasn't for Me. It's written by Syreeta L. Carrington and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So pick it up at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, or traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Syreeta, thank you again for coming on the show. It was great to talk.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
The new book by D.S. Boyce is titled Angel's Influence, and it's an exploration of Lucifer's fall and the ongoing spiritual battle that shapes humanity's destiny. And we're going to talk all about it right now here at the show. Diana, the author, is right here with me. Diana, welcome. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Diana, can you tell me all about what you've written in Angel's Influence?
Sure. Basically, it's a novel in story form about Lucifer. It begins in heaven when he decides to rebel, and it ends with his final judgment.
What kinds of readers did you have in mind when you were writing this, Diana?
Well, I was wanting to go to the audience of people who want to understand God and His Word. The whole concept is to take, rather than just take scriptures and throw them out there, which I see all the time happening, I wanted to take God's Word, put it in a chronological order, align it, put it in a story form so that people can understand who Lucifer is based off the Bible, and then come to their own conclusions of how much he might influence you.
Diana, what was that spark? What was that inspiration that made you say, hey, I got to sit down and start on this book?
Well, my spark was self-generated. For years, I would go to church and you'd watch ministers talk about the end times. And usually there's the cliche few verses like 666 and different things. And then they would you sit in the pew and you listen to them tell you what the end times, what Revelation and different prophecies mean. And it was so confusing to me because they made it sound like this book was like an enigma compared to everything else. It was not in order and it was chaotic and all over the place. So I decided to look for myself. And when I saw that there was a lot of things in the end times and in Revelation not being covered, I thought, okay, so we're cherry picking. And I didn't think that was good for people to kind of get a concept, because you hear people afraid to even read it, afraid to not even understand it. So I thought I'd take a viewpoint based off of the scriptures, take the time and put them in order and context, and then write a story about it.
When it comes to writing and publishing, are you new to this or do you have experience in it?
I'm not a scholar, if you're asking that. I did write another book, which after this one, I've learned some mistakes I did. I actually overwrote the first book. And so now I'm in the process of revising it to make it a little simpler to read, because I got some pretty good feedback on this book since I did that.
Once you got started on Angel's Influence, was this a long process overall, the writing and publishing and everything?
Yeah, it's all new. It's been like a journey, But when I first decided and moved in the spirit that I felt God wanted me to try to impact by maybe trying to make the end times and Revelation different things a little more understandable, because it was so confusing, so many different things out there. Not that I'm trying to tell people what it is. I'm just laying it out there. You can come to your own conclusions. At least you'll have certain things that are never touched, And so when I thought about it and I did the first book, I decided I wanted to do not like a trilogy, but 3 companion books. And the first one deals with Revelation from a different perspective. And the one we're discussing today deals with the end times through the eyes of Lucifer. So we can develop the character of Lucifer, who this adversary is, that a lot of ministers and different people don't even really talk about.
When you started working with your publisher, Christian Faith, Diana, what did you find the most challenging part about that publishing end of things for you?
Everything was new. I wasn't sure I was doing things right. They'd have different ways of editing, and you'd go through it, and I was trying to learn that. And, of course, I made mistakes. As far as the marketing, that to me has been the hardest thing, because I've found a lot of people come out of the woodwork and turn out to be kind of the scammers. It's really a scary thing to go out there and try to pay somebody for marketing, because you just don't know what is legit or not,
Again, this book is titled Angel's Influence. It's written by D.S. Boyce and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, or traditional brick-and-mortar stores, and you'll be able to pick it up. Diana, thank you so much again for coming on the show. It was really nice to talk with you today.
Well, thank you. And I hope anybody decides to read it, they could get out of it how Lucifer influences you. I mean, a lot of people don't consider the unseen, and it's out there. Some people might not believe it, but those that do believe, that it'd be good to understand what the unseen how they can manipulate you, And I really appreciate this time.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. We hope to see you back here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.